Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you locally by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destination all season long. Wild Wild West, Tropicana, Harrah's Resort, Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. It's time for Football at 4. The host of the Inside the Birds podcast, Jeff Mosher, and this man, Adam Caplan, on a happy hour Friday. It's Eagles and Broncos. Adam, I heard a rumor that you're calling plays for the Broncos this week.
Yeah, how about that? So Pat Shurmur, the Broncos just confirmed in the last hour or so that he's not available. So it's COVID-19 issue, so he's not clear to work. Mike Shula is almost certainly going to call the play because Mike called them for the Panthers years ago. It's funny. I talked to coaches who've been in this spot, not for COVID, but where they've had to take over because a coach was unavailable, like a son or daughter got married, or they had to be away for something. And it's not easy because you're running somebody else's offense. And this is a West Coast offense, so Shula knows the terminology. He hasn't called the play. So play calling's an art. He's been with them for a while, so he knows the personnel, but it's not the guy who's been calling the play. So it's, the next question is it an advantage to the Eagles defense? And the question will be yes, theoretically, because you're not having the guys calling the plays every week. So it's a small advantage. How they take advantage of it will play throughout the game.
Right. Now, obviously, Denver, this is a team that is not a great offensive crew, right? It's not like you're the play caller and you're like, hey, I got this guy I can lean on or that I can kind of go to. This is an offense that is kind of challenged, Adam. They don't really have that standout kind of guy.
Oh, actually, they're loaded, Mike. They have Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, who's could be one of the top free agents next year, Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams. Okay, they're loaded on offense. The problem is the quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater is just not a guy. There's a reason why the Panthers didn't want him. He doesn't challenge downfield very much. We'll take an occasional shot. To me, he just holds the offense down. The offense should be way better than it is. Now, last week, their defense was dominant. We certainly can get to that. Their defense most weeks is really good. They just had a bad game against the Raiders. That was the Raiders' first game without John Gruden, and they didn't play well. That was in Denver, but they just completely shut down the Cowboys. They were up 30-0 to one point. Their offense could be top 5 if they had a better quarterback.
Right.
Let's put it that way. I think that's kind of what you're alluding to. They're not a high-powered offense.
Right, exactly. They're not an explosive offense for what their quarterback holds them back. They don't score a whole heck of a lot. They only average 20 points a game. Right, but
we saw it last week. We've seen it sporadically where you go, wow, that was a big play, but They don't make enough because they don't have a big-time quarterback. Drew Lock, their hope was that he would win the job. He's got a much stronger arm, but he doesn't have Teddy Bridgewater's accuracy. So that's the interesting matchup. Sunday is, okay, we know that the Broncos have some of the tallest receivers. They don't have a receiver who's shorter than 6'1". How do they deploy them? And also, I should mention, they're very talented tight end. Noah Fant's off the COVID list. Albert O, the other tight end, who was a 4th rounder last year, was super athletic. So if they spread the Eagles out, which I'm sure they'll do, that's where I think the Eagles are going to have some problems.
Right. Now, you mentioned Bridgewater and the fact that he doesn't have this big arm. This is almost the perfect defense for him. I mean, if they're going to call defense the way they have the first couple of weeks, Teddy Bridgewater's probably going to love this.
Yeah, look, last week what happened was the Eagles decided that, like they always do, not only will they not let you throw the ball downfield, they're like, we want you to throw the ball within 10 yards. And that's what they did to Keenan Allen, who Nick Sirianni coached when he was receivers coach with the Chargers many years ago. So he knows him very well. And Allen, who's not explosive, just he's great in a short area, gets open repeatedly. So the thing is, it's going to be Jerry Jeudy's area. He's their main slot receiver, first rounder of Alabama, who the Eagles really liked last year coming into the draft. So he's a guy that you're going to see a lot. I'm sure you'll see a lot of him. Avonte Maddox told us on Inside the Birds that he will play. And true to his word, he will play. He does not have the injury designation for the game. So that's a good thing with his knee injury. He didn't say what it is, but he told us on Tuesday that he'd be able to play. And he's going to be targeted because Jerry Jeudy's a guy who's going to get a lot of work on Sunday.
Yeah, I know that you mentioned their arsenal. They got guys Sutton, Patrick, Judy. I thought Patrick played excellent last week.
Good.
So what is John Gannon's – how does he defend the wide receivers? You mentioned the tight end here. We've heard so much about not getting enough pressure. Is this a week where you'll want to get those corners up, pressure these guys, and make Bridgewater make mistakes, or do you want to sit back a little bit more? How does John Gannon approach this?
It's a good question. I would think he's going to have to get a little bit of be aggressive, because Bridgewater is sort of I would call him a careful quarterback. He won't turn the ball over very much. He'll just check it down to the running back. So you got Melvin Gordon, who's always caught the ball well. Javonte Williams, who I love. He'll be the starter next year. He'll be a breakout player for me. He's number 33, second round out of North Carolina. I would think that you'll see the checkdowns to Melvin Gordon. He's had some big plays in the passing game this year. I would say, to answer your question, I think it's going to be some short area stuff. Tight ends will certainly be involved. The Eagles occasionally don't do well against tight ends. Last week, you saw they really didn't do well. So I think those guys can be a part of it. The Eagles simply don't press. They're one of the least press man teams. They're just pressing. You could play zone and press, but they don't. They've done a little bit more with their corners up than they have before, but it's just very little. So that's not good when you're going against these big receivers. I'm worried about this matchup, to be honest with you. I just don't think the Eagles have the cover players to match up well against Denver.
I saw last week a lot of that Denver game, and what they did was something that the Eagles have problems with. They ran the ball right at Dallas. I mean, they basically said, try and stop us. And I would imagine that if they're going to go to that again, Philadelphia's going to have a problem.
Yeah, and what's interesting about the Eagles' run defense, we looked at the last 2 weeks. Sure, it's been great, no doubt. Well, the Church don't run the ball very much. Austin Eckler's not a volume running back. And then if you look at the week before, the Eagles got a big lead early, and the Lions just couldn't get into the run game. So I wouldn't say the run defensive issues are solved yet. I don't trust it. And we know Denver will run the football with Gordon and Javonte Williams. So this is just if you just broke down the matchups of both sides of the football, they favored Denver almost everywhere, except the Eagles' offensive line's better, and Denver's got some injury issues at both tackles. That's where they could take advantage, but they didn't take advantage of the Chargers' issues on the right side of their offensive line last week.
That's right. What was the guy's name? Storm
Norton, yeah.
Storm Norton. He held up pretty good at there. I was going to ask you about how the Denver offensive line injuries are going to factor into this game. There's been a lot of talk about how, beat up this team is.
Yeah, so Bobby Massey, the right tackle, doesn't look good for him. Garrett Bowles almost certainly won't play with his high ankle sprain. He's their left tackle. They've got a couple below-average tackles. Calvin Anderson and Cameron Fleming probably will be their starting tackles. Fleming started a bunch of years. He's been with a bunch of teams. He's a journeyman. So what happened last week was they had Justin Herbert get rid of the ball very quickly. A lot of three-step drops. Paul was out within 1.75 seconds. That's how you defeat a pass rush. But when you do that, you got to press the receivers. And they didn't do that to negate that. And that was a mistake tactically. So that to me is the key here. Also, yeah, they could be without three linemen. I know they're definitely Quinn Meinertz, the third rounder at Wisconsin Whitewater. He'll definitely start this week at right guard. So they're going to be without as many as three offensive linemen this week. The question is, the only way the chance the Eagles have to win this game is if they pressure Bridgewater because of those injuries on their offensive line.
All right, last 2 weeks, obviously, Nick Sirianni, the light has hit him in the head. We can run the ball. We can do that. How will he find running the ball this week against, Los Angeles, not a very good run-stuffing team. Detroit, not very good. Where's Denver?
Denver's above average. What happened was, like, the week they really were awful. Dearness Johnson had his first ever NFL start. Now he'll start again this week for the Browns, but he went off against them for over 140 yards on 22 carries. That game was in Cleveland, but they had a lot of missed tackles. Oh, another note for Denver, where there's some advantages. They're down 4 inside linebackers, 2 outside linebackers. Obviously, Von Miller was traded. Their other outside linebacker, Bradley Chubb's on injured reserve. He had ankle surgery earlier this season. They're down 4 inside linebackers. In fact, they could be down 5. Baron Browning, who's now taken over, he was not even supposed to play this season. He's a back injury. We have to see what he does today. The Broncos are practicing right now, so we have to see what they do. So the one Eagles advantage they have is their line is really good versus Denver's nondescript defensive line That to me, to answer your question, I would come out running again. The formula for them to play competitive football the last 2 weeks is very simple. Take the air out of the football. You saw the first 2 series last week. Hurts was inaccurate. I thought Sirianni did a very good coaching tactical move there. He took the air out of the ball. And you notice in the third quarter, because they kept running, Hurts got real comfortable and made some great throws. That to me should be the formula. You got to come out running. And when Miles Sanders comes back, I wouldn't change it, but we'll see.
We will see. You mentioned Hurts. This Denver secondary, lowest percentage of zone defense in the NFL. How does that work for the Eagles' passing game?
Yeah, it is amazing. Them and the Ravens play the least amount of zone. They play a lot of man because they. It's interesting. When you look at their secondary, they're down a lot of corners. Old friend Ronald Darby's got to be in there. The knock on him, as we first outlined probably 2 or 3 years ago, and Inside the Birds, is that he's got bad eye discipline. Goes for the fakes, peeks in the backfield. Kyle Fuller, who the Broncos tried to trade because he lost the starting job, he's back starting. And Nate Hairston, who went to Temple, he's their slot corner now. Patrick Surtain is very questionable and doubtful with a knee sprain. Ronald Darby would be starting with him. So right now, Kyle Fuller and Darby and Hairston are your top corners. They don't have anyone else really, so they can't suffer another injury. But the Eagles have to be careful. The way that they're staying competitive is running the football.
Yeah.
So I'm not a run game guy. Coaches will tell you, let's do what helps us win. And if the defense would have shown up last week, they would have beaten the Chargers. The defense didn't show up. They scored 24 points. Most weeks, 24 points will win you a game, but last week the defense faltered and they lost.
Right. Now, they activated Jordan Howard from the practice squad or signed him from the practice squad to the active roster. It's going to be interesting to see when Sanders comes back how they utilize them. But, is Howard the key again this week? Do you feed him? He had 17 carries last week. Is he the guy you go with?
Yeah, and their line just created a big oval. They created so much room for him to run. I don't want to say that he looked great last week. It's just that, he did look good, but they opened lines. They opened all holes for him. And look, Jordan Howard, other than Miles Sanders in training camp, he was their best back. He beat out Boston Scott. Boston Scott had a nice camp, but Howard was really good. But because he didn't really fit what they were looking for at a running back, they cut him, put him on the practice squad, and they did sign him off there. So they have one elevation left. This counts as a signing. That's why they did the signing. They didn't waste the last elevation. You only have 3 per player. And it'll be, like you said, when Sanders comes back, then the question is, do they keep Howard on the active roster? Because the only way you can get him to the practice squad is by waiving him. All players, if you want to cut him, they're waived after the trade deadline, and the only way you can get him is you got to pass through waivers. So you take that chance that someone could claim him if he continues to play well. And then you saw Boston Scott had 10 carries. Hurts had some really nice runs, some designed, some where he, went on his own. But the interesting thing is, if they get in a throw fest, which they have not had to do in a while, how will they deploy the passing game other than Smith and Goddard? Because Watkins simply does not get the ball enough, and Rager does not at all.
Yeah. Well, that's evident that Rager is almost deemed not even a part. I mean, you see them running 13 personnel a lot. They're putting what's the third tight end? Tyree Jackson got a lot of snaps on 13 personnel last week, and that's basically because they're running so much. But I want to ask you about Smith and Goddard, those two guys. Smith seemingly is becoming a bigger part of the offense, but it's harder to get these receivers involved with 13 and so many runs.
And I can't listen. I've criticized Sirianni a lot this season, but the coaching has been really good offensively. They went with what would win. They went with a high percent. Anytime you play 3 tight ends more than 5 plays, that's known as a lot in the National Football League. There's some teams that never use 3 tight ends at all in a game. Some teams only dress 2 tight ends. Or you could have gone jumbo, where you could have gone with a bigger offensive lineman, but they went with 3 tight ends. And the other thing is, because Jackson was so accomplished as a pass catcher, I saw him in training camp make some spectacular catches because he can move for guys 6'7". Don't be shocked when he's out there that he catches the football. The one thing they don't have at receiver is size, and when you spread guys out, he's a mismatch. You're not the only guy who can match up on is Justin Simmons, who's the tallest safety in the NFL at 6'3". But you're going to see a lot of on Goddard. That you can count on Sunday.
Hey, Adam, you guys on Inside the Birds this week spent a lot of time talking about John Gannon and whether it's personnel or scheme. Where do you kind of sit on where this is? Because we might find out a little bit more this week.
I think it's a combination. You've got at safety, you've got two older guys, right, in their 30s. Anthony Harris is the guy who's here because of Gannon. He knows him from the Minnesota defense. And Rodney McLeod has done a nice job coming back from his latest injury. These are guys who may not be with the team next year. You're a corner that one thing, and I don't know how he missed this for 2 months, but the Eagles don't really have a backup outside corner. McPherson's not ready. He wasn't ready last week when he came in. So just think about it, right? If the Broncos spread them out when they go to 11 personnel, how are the Eagles going to combat that? Okay, yeah, sure. Maddox is the slot corner. You got the two outside receivers. If somebody gets hurt, are you going to put Maddox on the outside where he's not as comfortable? That's a problem.
They got 9 corners on this roster. None of them play outside.
None of them play outside.
Crazy.
None of them are good enough.
Crazy.
None of them are good enough. That's another thing. Depth is not how many guys you have. It's how many guys you feel comfortable putting in. You can have 50 guys.
Yeah.
If you only have 4 guys you like, your depth isn't good enough.
Crazy.
That's depth.
I want to get your opinion real quick. Obviously, Howie Roseman has to do his due diligence for this draft. But is that what's the message to your quarterback that, hey, I'm on television watching these two guys play? Like, are you basically telling your quarterback you're on borrowed time? Do you have he has to go watch, right?
Well, yeah, but yes, and B, Hurts knows he's not guaranteed anything past the season.
Yeah.
She's not even guaranteed to finish the season. I'm sure he will,
Mhm.
barring something highly unforeseen. But, yeah, they don't know who their starter is past the season, and Roseman should be. I mean, it's not. I know. Other personnel people have told me they've seen him at games over the years, so it's not surprising. And he likes scouting. I've talked to him about that over the years. And he likes scouting. So yeah, I wouldn't read into it, because anything with this team becomes news, and it's worth mentioning. I don't have a problem with it. You should, if you see him in a game, sure, mention it, but it doesn't really mean anything. We've known. We mentioned the spring. It would be unlikely going to the season. Hurts will be their guy in 22. Nothing has changed. He's going to have to play lights out to even be in the conversation for next year. But there's time left. They're not letting him throw now because this is how they think they have to win or stay competitive.
Yeah.
But there's time left. There's time. He's going to have to play lights out.
Right. For those of you out there, Howie Roseman was at the game last night. Pitt, North Carolina. Sam Howell, Kenny Pickett. Both guys projected to be some people think Pickett's the best quarterback in this draft right now. And I know it's a little early to start talking about all that stuff, but Howell some thought was going to be the number 1 overall pick at one point. I think he's kind of fallen out of favor. So that's where Roseman was last night watching those two guys.
Yeah, Kenny Pickett, Mike, has got small hands for a quarterback. In fact, I probably have bigger hands than he does. That's going to be an issue for personnel people. I've known about this for a year. One personnel guy said that he wears gloves because his hands are small. You'll notice if you really watch him, sometimes you see his hands with gloves on when it's warm out. It's because of his hand size. That'll be an issue, but he's athletic. He's a competitive kid. It on paper right now, unless a bunch of underclassmen declare, it's not on paper a good draft, but the jobs of general managers and personnel directors and scouts is to find those guys that you think you could build around.
All right, Adam Caplan, Eagles, Denver. How you feeling this week? You think they got 3 road wins?
I know. They fool me every week. I was going with the Chargers all week, and then when I saw who they were without 3 of their top 4 corners, I was like, all right, the Eagles were going to find a way to upset them. They almost did, obviously, but I'm picking Denver all the way. I felt that way. I'm not going to be changing this one. The matchups, even with Shermer not coaching, the matchups are just too good. Maybe this will help the Eagles a little bit. The Eagles have been somewhat competitive on the road, more than they have at home.
Yeah.
But in the end, Broncos are clearly the better team.
All right. Adam Caplan, Inside the Birds podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, check out InsideTheBirds.com. Mosher's back on Monday to recap Eagles, Broncos. They have their pregame show 10 o'clock on the YouTube channel with the entire Inside the Birds crew. Check that out live on Sunday on the Inside the Birds YouTube channel. Adam Caplan, good to see you, my friend.
All right, man. Thank you.
All right, he's Adam Caplan, and, of course, he is Football at 4.